let's talk a little bit about your upbringing. You come from a lacrosse family. Your dad was an All-American at Maryland. Tell us a little bit about growing up in Westchester County and picking up the lacrosse stick for the first time.
Bedford was definitely, there was not a lot of lacrosse at all. So my dad actually took it over. I remember him coming off the train from New York City and taking off his shoes, but had the whole business attire. He was like one of the first guys to ever coach. Taught us all boys lacrosse. Everyone's like, no. You cannot check. You can't hit girls. And so definitely a rough and tough kind of upbringing. It was really awesome to have him around.
To start, we just want to talk about how you grew up in Oshawa, where lacrosse is a big part of your life. Your dad, Stan, was a legend in his own right in the Junior A circuit, and in college at NC State. But talk to me about growing up and playing lacrosse in Ontario, and how much of an influence did your dad have on your game?
He had a huge influence on me. It was kind of growing up in Ontario, you kind of have either lacrosse or the main sport is hockey. So everybody plays hockey when they grow up, and then you have basically a decision to make, whereas mine was kind of easy. My dad was a big lacrosse guy, so, he got me in at an early age. I started when I was 4, so, which is pretty crazy. My dad was kind of the first from this area to start. We got players like Zach Greer, Mark Matthews, Zach Coleman went to Hopkins, Chad Tutton, a lot of guys that went down south. We kind of started that trend, and now if you look at it across the board, there are guys from this area going south, every single year, tons of guys. So, growing up here, it's one of the biggest lacrosse towns, in the entire world. So I feel fortunate in that aspect. But, I always knew I wanted to be a lacrosse player, and, it's awesome.
Last night, he actually played at Towson the same time your dad was in at NC State, and he was pretty honest that your dad torched him on defense a lot. So he had a lot of good things to say about your dad.
I didn't get to see him play because we didn't really have the greatest technology back then, but, I heard some stories from a lot of guys that I meet, in the lacrosse world, and they have always great things to say about him, and I wish I could have seen him play. He was an absolute beast, so it kind of sucks, but, you just kind of live off the stories, and, he still has some records too, so that's pretty cool to have that.
I kind of want to get into a little bit of your father, Miles Harrison. Father's Day is coming up, so we wanted to kind of bring recognition to him. He attended Morgan State and was a member of the famous 10 Bears team. How did your father's career influence your decision to eventually play lacrosse?
Yeah, no, great question. My father's career is the reason I played lacrosse, right? So for me, lacrosse growing up was the third on the totem pole. It was always basketball, soccer, lacrosse. Because my dad never pushed it on me, and so I just didn't gravitate towards it. And so I didn't really start falling in love with lacrosse, taking it seriously, and it didn't become my sport until my junior year of high school, when I got old enough to understand my dad's story and what they did at Morgan. And then I wanted to be a lacrosse player, right? So without him, there would have been no reason to pursue it. Up until literally mid junior year, late junior year, I was convinced I was playing basketball or soccer in college, and lacrosse would end there.
Where did you develop those stick tricks? Was that just you experimenting at home? Or like you mentioned, your older brother, did he kind of, help you with that?
Yeah, I grew up in the backyard playing at any point, whether that was before school or after school on the weekends. We were making up our own small-sided versions of the sport, playing one-on-one with my brother, and he's also very creative style of play as well. But I have to say my dad has coached me my entire life, and he just brings such a fun aspect to practice and training. And I don't think growing up I ever thought I have to go to practice, or I got to go in the backyard and get my reps in. I just looked at it as just playing and having an absolute blast. And, my dad was always someone that was as long as your stick's in your hand and you're having fun with it, that's the best practice in the world that you could ever have. So, he was always kind of messing around and showing me stick tricks, and then trying to get me to combo those up with other stick tricks, and really with the goal being your stick should be an extension of your hand. So if you can kind of throw these stick tricks and make these combinations that are pretty difficult look smooth, then actually playing, passing, and catching will be the easy part come game day. So I have to say my dad was definitely a huge influence in the stick trick world, for sure. He can kick my butt still, so.
So you talked a bit about your family vacations, the Final Four weekend and all of that, and I'm assuming a lot of that has to do with your dad. influenced you as a lacrosse player, overall athlete, and also a leader?
A ton. He was, as accomplished of a player as he could have been, especially back in the 70s. Played on world teams, and player of the year, won a championship. Aside from that, has just been a phenomenal coach, the last 25, 30 years. So I was super lucky to have him by my side as a lacrosse player since I was super young, training with him, playing up, playing on his teams my whole life, lacrosse, football, basketball. I think he coached a year of baseball. So, we were always really tight. And I think the couple of messages that he really preaches to everybody, are something that was, obviously hammered home for me, year in and year out. And I think, had a huge impression on me. And a lot of it's just centered around, doing extra work and making sure that you're over-prepared for your games. And you're always learning. You're never really satisfied. So, that's persisted into today. I'd be lying if I said that he's not still coaching me up now at 27 years old. So it's been a huge advantage for me, in the lacrosse world. But he's also been a tremendous father for me my whole life, and has always put family first. And now that I am getting a little older, and because for lack of a better way of putting it, becoming a man, I think learning from him in that sense and seeing how he's carried himself and how he's put our family first and his children before anything. It's been I think I'll continue to learn from him off the field, for as long as we're both around. So it's been an incredible kind of duo, and I couldn't be more thankful for him.
Your dad was a kind of a local legend there in BC, and what was it like being exposed to a sport at such a young age and growing up in a household where lacrosse was such a big part of your life?
Yeah, honestly, just like you said, as soon as I was born, I was given a stick, and lacrosse was a big focus in our family right from the get-go. So, like you said, my dad was a pretty big legend, still is to this day here in Ladner, and his jersey's retired up in the rafters in our local arena, where he I think played close to 20 years in Senior B and kind of a couple games up here and there with Senior A teams. But yeah, he won 2 President's Cups, which is the Senior B Canadian Championships here in Ladner, and that's a big reason why his jersey's retired up in the rafters.